Okay, so just to put, just to get some clarity on what it is that we do, we are a group of colleges, group of sixth form colleges. We've got just under 7,000 students. We've got one that has 3,500 students, one that has 2,250, and one that has 1,250. One is completely vocational. So these are where we've got students as low as entry level doing BTEC equivalents as well, which is A-level equivalents. We've got one that's purely A-level. So those are all higher academic, more academically students, and then we have one that's mixed. So I'm group head of pastoral support for the whole group. So that just gives you an idea of what it is that we're dealing with. We have what we call personal progress tutors. So we have those who work one-to-one with all the students. Every student has one. So I've got 38 of those across the group, and they meet regularly with each of their students. They have cohorts of about 220, but they meet with them regularly. We do low-level anxiety, medium-level anxiety. Anything more serious than that goes to our welfare departments, and we have one of those in each of the colleges. The initiative that we did was called Walking Therapy. So we got some funding to fund, I need to read this now, so to fund students to be able to go and do counselling, but do it whilst they're walking. So the idea is to give the students time to talk, to learn how to observe their surroundings as well. So the nature, trees, flowers, other people, and to embrace just being in the moment. It gives the student the opportunity to access counselling in a more relaxed environment, whilst also teaching the individual the skill of walking whilst appreciating the wider world, so mindful walking. It was aimed specifically at our high-risk students. So these were significant mental health issues, including suicide attempts or suicidal thoughts, eating disorders, etc. All of the students were aged between 16 and 19. So the individual would go on a walk with a specifically trained counsellor over a planned route that obviously be risk assessed, bearing in mind we were taking suicide risks out with us. These counsellors received specialist supervision to support them. The walks also took place regardless of the weather. So it doesn't matter if it was raining. If it's raining, you put a coat on, you take an umbrella with us. So we asked, students were made to plan accordingly. The individuals will be given access to 8 50-minute sessions, either through self-referral or for student welfare referral. So we received funding of £10,000 for 1 year to run the sessions to see if they'd be successful. Demand was so high, we recruited the support of Footsteps Walking With You, which is an external agency specialising in walking therapy. 80 individuals took part in our pilot, and all were welfare assessed using the Edinburgh-Warwick scale prior to starting the counselling and at the end of the counselling. In all but one case, everybody's scores improved. Also, the 8 of the 80, the majority were more positive and able to engage, better re-engage with their studies, and the majority of them made it to the end of the academic year. We've now trained our in-house counsellors so that this is something that they can do, and we can move it forward and continue it next year.
Yeah, so just a bit of context. I am elected pastor at Alain's. There's some amazing pictures from Kathy. That's awesome, that intervention. Jotted down, I'll be in touch. But I'm also a chair of governors for a central board for a big multi-academy trust. I'm the chair of governors for 3,000 kids in London school. Now look, I'm going to flip-flop to the other side of the fence about like maybe preventative measures, proactive measures around mental health and wellbeing, which I think would be really helpful. And I know I've been around with BrainWaves since the start of this sort of project, I think, or well, as soon as I started introducing people who knew much less than them about about things, certainly around data. And I think the thing that really drew me to it was that idea of really proactive and enabling for as many people as we can possibly reach. I think that is a really, really difficult thing to do. I think we shouldn't underestimate what a lofty ambition that is. And actually, some of the work that I do with the Youth Mental Health Coalition, and Rachel's here, we work together on that as well, has shown that landing genuine cross-sector interventions is a really, really difficult thing to do. So, you know, unless you really want to focus on things like ISAMs and Broncoms and making sure your systems and structures work really smoothly, which makes everybody happier, which is probably not that interesting to talk about. It could be really, really difficult. So, you know, Kathy's already alluded to, even within her institution and her organisation, there's such a range of students that you're working with. I've I've met 3 or 4 different people from completely different schools to the one that I work in primarily, and with a completely different experience to the schools that I help govern and I help oversee in terms of that leadership piece. But clarity and ease is important, fundamentally. But look, a bit jazzier, and Julian, I hope I'm not going to cut across you. But I honestly didn't know that the glossy charts are coming out. But the whole PERMA model is something that we have scaffolded really thoroughly into ALENT and also into the Multi Academy Trust that I work with. Look, it's a really tangible, we found it's a really tangible way for students to self-check, to become self-aware, and for students to start to speak the common language. So we absolutely espouse that model. Now, I'm going to quote Napoleon, which is slightly abstract, but I like it. And someone said it at a flourishing conference I went to the other day, and it's about having a strategy like this implemented into your schools, no matter how loosely. Effectively, Napoleon's strategy is not to constrain, but to set the conditions for adaptation and improvisation. And what I would say is, when you hear a little bit more about PERMA, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the E and the M, the thing that we have done at ALENT, that we have probably the intervention that we have done is we have introduced a make it happen space. So you will all have EWOs, education welfare officers, people who work within your schools who I suppose are non-teaching support. Some of them may be counsellors, some of them may be trained in student welfare particularly. But our real focal point has been to just empower one of those who's a remarkable human, but you all have those remarkable humans with the ability for students to go there and be like, I need this or I want this. And then he is charged with just making that happen, whether it's scruffy, whether it's messy, whether it goes anywhere. But what we have seen spin out of that, and the E and the M in PERMA are probably the two that, if you really dig into it, are two of the hardest things to achieve. What we have got then is we've got students coming to us with weird and wonderful things that initially you might look at and be like, oh, how does that even work? And we're just saying, okay, let's do that then. And we have had fire and pizza parties, and we have had music on arrival, we have had busking set up around the school site of various qualities. We have had Lego sorting. We thought Lego great. We use Lego as a therapeutic sort of a restorative exercise for kids that have come out of lessons to get back to class. Kids turned up and were like, hey, look, we saw this thing online, we want to try this. Lego sorting is attended by about 24 kids, one lunchtime a week, and they take a big pile of Lego, and there's red bricks and white bricks and blue bricks. And they do it, and I'm like, wow, this is amazing. And then they pile it all back in and they go. But those are 19 students that are accessing an activity of their design that we think is slightly strange, that gives them agency, it makes them feel like they're contributing. There were 4 originally, now there's 19. So those 4 feel like they're building something or making a contribution. It's strong. It's really, really strong for those kids. And unsurprisingly, those 4 children are probably 4 children that we've struggled to reach through a lot of our mainstream offer. And obviously some of these things blow up, right? So Swifty Society is huge. It's a monster. Okay. But journaling is 9 students sitting there quietly, producing beautiful works of art in these books that no one will ever see because they don't want to share them. And that is probably the challenge to my head. Hey, you know what? It's not for you. And it's not for Twitter, and it's not for us, it's for the kids. And so my whole intervention is around enabling our guy to basically make that happen. And if there are ways for you to do that in the school and then record that and then put it out there, you know, rubbish podcasts that do see the light of day, but great podcasts that never do, because the process is an important bit of that enabling piece around PERMA, which you're going to hear a little bit more about. But like, you know, you can hit the positive experience, have fun, do the happy clapping. You can do the relationships education piece, really, really important. We know the value. The achievements you can recognise in lots of different ways. Students can help each other. There's a million mechanisms. But the E and the M, a sense of meaning and contribution, is, I think, genuinely only achieved by just saying over to you. Not student-led, student-conceived, led, messy, whatever that looks like. Look at that. Well, that was fun moments is our intervention. And I actually think cross-sector, whatever your situation, wherever you are, that's it, right? I have a student who's come to me and it's like, hey, sir, the gardening stuff is really good. The bit about the garden I've really enjoyed most was like when we were digging it all over, I want to dig a hole. Let's see where that goes. Australia, perhaps. That's it. Thank you.
My name's Kristen, I'm an English teacher, but in my role as Deputy Head of Sixth Form, I deliver some of the personal development lessons, which is what we call PSHE, and we've been doing BrainWaves for the past year. So a little bit of context. It's the first time we've done it this academic year, so we've been part of the research trials for this. We teach them to year 12 through personal development PSHE, and as part of the research schools, the students give feedback every lesson, as do I. It's 1 hour lessons on a 6-week carousel, and the kids move, we don't. So I get my set of kids for 6 weeks, and then I become, in theory, the expert on the thing I'm teaching, and they move on afterwards. And currently I'm the only member of staff delivering the BrainWaves lessons in school. We're running them again with year 12 next year, and we're hoping to extend it further down the school for good reasons. We've also been part of the cohort study trial, and we're going to be continuing with that in the future. So the reason that a positive mental health intervention for me has been the BrainWaves lessons is because of what I used to have to teach before. If I was neurodivergent in any way, and this was my title slide, I would freak out. If I was 17 with anxiety and I was told that that's what anxiety is, I just don't think it's very age appropriate. So we had lots of not entirely positive feedback about the lessons that we used to teach. I actually met a former student on the bus. It was hilarious. I bollocked him so many times for being late last year, and I was like, what are you doing? I'm on my way to work. I work at the hospital. I was like, you ever late for work now, James? He went, oh no, I wouldn't do that. It's really important. Thanks. But he is doing an apprenticeship at the church, and he said, what are you doing? I said, I'm going to Warmford because this, that, the other. And I said, well, you didn't get the BrainWaves lessons. You were the year before. And he went, yeah, no offence, miss. Those were not great. And I was like, no, none taken, not my resources. I think things like putting an expert's words in a speech bubble to make it accessible for 17-year-olds is patronising. They're almost adults. And this I also struggled with. I've taught this lesson 6 times. These are the results of a study, a UK study, that says, excluding social media, bullet point 1, number 1, the number 1 thing that boys are worried about is the pressure to be macho, their image, girls acting cool in front of them. So that is exactly the response I got the 6 times I taught this lesson to a group of 17-year-old boys. They're like, which boys are these? Where did you find them? Are they in this school? Are they on another planet? Like, seriously. And I had to say, I don't know, because the resources were not provided with, I didn't get any study data. I got nothing at all. I just got this slide and a group of kids going, miss, what is this? And I was going, fair question, no idea. And this person annoyed me beyond all. She's in everything. Some days she's a kid, some days she's a trusted adult. Once she was a social worker. Once, for no other reason, she was wearing a rainbow striped sweater. And I just thought, great, no, big eyes, teeny tiny waist, massive boobs. Yeah, no, this is how we should be representing kids to kids. So for lots of reasons, I struggled with teaching this. And then we got invited to take part in BrainWaves. So why I think the lessons are really good, and this lesson in particular, which I think has had probably the single biggest impact of a PSHE lesson I have taught in my time at school. They're really clear, they're really coherent, they are age appropriate in their use of colour and image. Also, it's not stresses me out so much. Here's a photograph, here's some clip art, here's a cartoon. I can't cope, what do you want me to look at? I don't like it. This is clean and slick. And if you just look at the lesson headings, these are all stuff that the kids tell us they want to know about. And the lesson that I'm going to particularly focus on is about keeping you and your friends safe. There's an awful lot that goes on in schools, and I'll talk a little bit about our background in a minute, why this is hugely, hugely important. So we start off by the fact that they are lessons that the kids want to be part of because they're interesting. They also like the fact they're part of a research school. You know, I started with this one of 16 schools trying this one. Great. Yes, you get a certificate. So they quite like that. They like the fact that they give back their feedback, and I can say to them, oh, actually, I need to update the new activity because we fed back there was an activity missing from the work, but they've changed it. They were like, oh, because we said a thing. Yeah, you said a thing, and it's been responded to. And next year, when I teach these lessons, they'll be different again. And that makes them feel valued. And it does a really big job for me because I can go, this is not me telling you this. This is not random woman telling you this. Oxford University say this, there is research, and I can share it with you. And they are a bit like, oh, okay. And they've been really active participants in focus groups as well. And they love doing that because they see the value. And I know that in one of the focus groups, one of the kids said afterwards, I think that what I would prefer is this, but I know what would be most helpful to the research is this. So maybe I would give my consent in a different way because I know it's going to be useful. And I just think, you know, we need to credit our young people with actually wanting to help, and being part of a research project like that is hugely important. And then on to the research. The very first lesson you do, if you haven't done it, is actually saying to kids, there is studies, you know, there's research. I'll share the research with you. Here are some links, read up about it. First activity is looking at a TikTok video about how taking cold showers is really good. And then go, I'm not listening to someone on TikTok. How many followers has she got? Because that matters. And then you say, but here are 8 scientific studies that show you the research I can give you. Look it up. What do you notice? And we talk about different researchers. So I might show you the slide and I might go, sorry, this is on mice, or this is in Germany, or this was 100 years ago. Why is this relevant? And it's okay, good. You've got the concept that the research that goes into the project should have some bearing on the validity you give to it. And they take that on board, and they're very good at now going, maybe, maybe not. If it stops one kid doing a stupid thing that they've seen on TikTok, it'll be worth it. So the lesson I wanted to focus on is this: keeping you and your friends safe. We all know that our kids are, I don't think the word crisis is overstating it. We know that it's difficult and challenging. And we also know from the research that kids don't talk to grown-ups when they're not feeling well, when they're in crisis. They're much more likely to talk to their friends. And one of the advice that the friends might give them is talk to a grown-up. Well, I don't want to, I'm talking to you. We have had to do a special assembly to the 6th form. We had 2 close incidences of suicide attempted. Neither of our students, but one who was very good friends with students and messaged them and told them of their actions. It was our students that notified the, so in the same weekend, the brother of a student. So we took intervention and we did a special assembly for our 6th form students. The counsellors were physically in the room. We all stood there, every single member of staff who was available, and stood in front of them and said, we are here. And we literally had students running out of the room, and they were literally being called by people to go, come with me, I'll take you and talk to them. But we wanted to make it very obvious that we were a presence to support them. But what this lesson does, this keeping you and your friends safe, is it's helping give those students some agency to help themselves and to help their friends. Because they're going to meet someone in crisis. Either now or at university, they will. And so some of the things that we talk about are things that they can do to help their friend. So I'm absolutely fascinated with the walking thing. Lots of things we talk about is how do you initiate a conversation with a friend who you've noticed. We give them some things to look out for: withdrawing from social events, not taking care of themselves, eating too little, eating too much. You know, you notice this in a friend, what do you do? And one of the things we say is maybe go on a walk with them, because it is the best way to get information out of my kids. There's not face-to-face across a dining room table, it's sitting in the car or going for walks. They're not making eye contact and you're not drilling into them. Go for a walk. Nature, we know, is really good for all of these things. And they'll even say, oh, also, miss, we'll be out in natural daylight. You told us that in lesson 2. That's really good for mental health. Yeah, well done, you were listening. So we go back to this analogy: you put on your own oxygen mask first and you can help for yourself. And we give them permission to say, it's okay to say to someone, I'm finding this quite triggering, or I'm really sorry that I'm seeming upset. It isn't about me, but I'm finding what you're telling me quite challenging. Is it okay if we take a break now, but follow up with a checkup later? You know, we give them the skills of knowing what to say. One of the biggest things that they tell us is they're scared of saying the wrong thing. It's my biggest fear teaching these lessons. I'm scared of saying the wrong thing. I'm absolutely petrified of making it worse. And so hopefully this lesson in particular, and I know that they've had impact because I have had these lessons referenced in other lessons. I've had these lessons referenced in our leadership application interviews this year. What would you like to see us do more of? Well, I think a bit more like, you know, like when we do this BrainWaves and we talk about this, or we all know that this is true because we've been taught it, could we have more of that? And this lesson has generated disclosures where at the end of it, kids have found me and said, Miss, I need to talk to you about, because I recognised this person in that lesson and I think they need help. And because of this lesson, we have put interventions in place with individuals in our school who would have gone under the radar, or the kids who spoke to me and opened up, and not just to me, to our student support managers and my counsellors. They would have been dealing with that themselves potentially if they hadn't had this lesson. So I think the reason it's so important is we're giving them places to go for help, and we're saying, we know you're going to come into contact with this, you're not doing it on your own, We are here to help you sow all of these other places, and here in that first instance are some of the things you might want to say and you might want to do. And that is why I think these lessons have been some of the most impactful mental health interventions of the past year for me. Thanks.
I'd like to echo everything that Kristen said. We also have been delivering the BrainWaves lessons to year 12 this year. We've actually just done the year 8 ones as well. So it's my intention that next year all of the year groups will have input from the BrainWaves curriculum. So to give you some context, I am the PSHE coordinator, which I've been doing for a couple of years, and then previous to that, I was 8 years as a Senko. So I've been in my school for 12 years now. We're very, very small. We've got about 250 pupils in this senior school. And they receive a 40-minute PSHE lesson once a week with a specialist team of people who've got space on their timetable to deliver PSHE lessons. So actually the intervention that I offered to talk about isn't one that we put in place recently. Like I said, this is the end of my 12th year at Tranby, and it existed when I started. And it's dead easy. We have a very robust lunchtime activity program, you know, which we were talking about earlier. And the idea of those is that it's non-academic. You know, yes, there's some sporty stuff, yes, there's some musical stuff, but a lot of it is, as a teacher, we choose what we want to talk about. So, for example, this year I've been doing macrame because I wanted to learn it, and I knew that I wouldn't have any time to do it unless I offered it as an activity. So basically, I have one piece that I've unpicked several times over the course of the year, and now I just have a lot of thread. But I'm hoping that one day I'll have a plant hanger. So we are required to offer these lunchtime activities, and the children are expected to do 3. So firstly, I think that's a great use of their time because the devil makes work. And also it's allowing them to establish those relationships in a different, you know, from a different kind of point of view with teachers, and also they're meeting people with kind of like minds and similar interests. So I think that's a really beneficial use of their time. But the one that I want to talk about is called Chat and Chill. And Chat and Chill was actually established, as I said, pre-me, as an SEN intervention. And it was set up for a young lad with social communication disorder. And basically the point of it was to help him to practice how you have a conversation, how you ask a question, you wait for the answer, and kind of interpreting body language and intonation, that kind of thing. And it really snowballed. So it was an invitation only to begin with. And so Jamie invited a couple of friends that he wanted to have there with him. And then we sort of opened it out a little bit to kind of our waifs and our strays and our little kind of funny spots. Because we know, don't we, that a child with SEN is more likely to have issues with their mental health. So, you know, kind of trying to head it off at the pass before it becomes a thing. So it's really simple. All it costs is a bottle of squash and a pack of biscuits. And it's a safe space. We do control who attends. Because, you know, we're looking for positive social role models for the children, and also, you know, we don't want them to feel intimidated or uncomfortable in any way. And that's it. They practice having conversations, and sometimes they'll do it around a board game. We did have a SALT like suggested scheme of work that we were supposed to be working through with one boy, but it was demeaning for the boy. He was in year 7. It was like 3-year-old stuff. So we sort of shelved that a little bit. So yeah, so it tends to be a board game, or they'll give a topic, or they might even just sit and do some colouring. And as they're doing the colouring, like you said, side by side, not face to face, they are just having conversations. And we have an Elsa in there who, you know, will sort of prod things along. If it's kind of stalled a little bit, she'll make a suggestion of a question, or maybe they'll change topic, or whatever it might be. And some of them will come along with little conversation prompt cards that they have. And you know, it's there if they want it, but usually they manage without. So yeah, so it's just nice and cozy and friendly, safe space, pack of biscuits, bottle of squash, and that's about it really. No rocket science.
What sort of impact are you seeing with the individual children then?
It builds their friendship groups. So you know, I don't have any data. I can't give you any data. You can't kind of measure what if, can you? But if I see that child, instead of sitting on their own in the refectory, they're sitting with a couple of other kids from that group, then for me that's been successful, hasn't it? And also, you know, genuinely the especially for the children that are sort of on the autistic spectrum, is that practice, you know, how do they interact with me now as a member of staff, instead of this and not looking at me and not interacting with me, actually are they able to kind of look at me as they speak to me? Are they able to initiate a conversation about how my day is?
Any other questions? Karen?
Do you get students ever sort of self-referring or asking us to be part of that
Yeah, a lot.
process?
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah, it's interesting. So it's, I suppose we're getting that as it's out there, and then the kids will come to you and be like, could I? Because I think it helps.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not, there's no stigma either. I think we're like I said, we're a very small school. We're really quite, you know, the kids are very inclusive. So, you know, it's not an embarrassment to be invited to come along to chat and chill. Some of them do, like I said, do ask maybe a lot of it for the biscuits, I suspect. But yeah, exactly. If it means that they're sort of supporting other kids, why not?